JCC News.
I'm Jenna.
I'm Sierra.
And I'm Carla. It's been brought to our attention that nobody in modern society knows anything about modern poetry. As you can see here. So, sir, what do you know about modern poetry?
I don't know very much about modern poetry.
What do you think it means?
It's more in the mid 20th century to now.
What do you know about postmodern poetry?
Not much. I know it's modern and it's post, like Post Malone.
Sir, please leave.
See what we mean?
So now we're going to be interviewing a few people to see what they think about postmodernism and modernism. So we have modern and postmodern poetry.
Yes, actually, this era was derived from the end of the Second World War. So many people were being affected by the political and literary movements that came about from the war. And these old scientific ways of thinking were being replaced with philosophical and creative ideas.
Was there any specific emphasis that made this movement stand out?
Well, this movement was all about making it new, adding new elements to literature, like developing more intense imagery and emotion. This version of poetry really stood for human significance.
So then what's the difference between modern and postmodern poetry?
So basically, postmodern poetry is like a second edition of modern poetry. They removed a lot of poets and actually added quite a few. Essentially, it's a continuation of the previous movement. They're pulling certain ideals and elements from it, evolving others from modernism. And postmodernism begins with postmodernism brings the hidden ideas of modernism to life, giving them their time in society.
Did this evoke criticism among the people?
It's funny that you ask.
It's not funny that I asked, but continue.
Yes, it did actually. It brought up a lot of controversy. Critics claimed it was too intellectually diverse and added nothing to the analytical knowledge. Poets of this time were talking about things that shouldn't have been talked about, yet they absolutely needed to be discussed. They were saying the things that everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to say.
That was a fantastic interview.
Sure was. Weren't they fantastic?
The real question is, what poem really encompasses all that modernism is?
Good question.
Well, do we have the poem for you, Into the Strenuous Briefness by E.E. Cummings. Take it away. Into the strenuous briefness, life, hand organs in April, darkness, friends, I charge laughing into the hair-thin tints of yellow dawn. Into the women-colored twilight, I smilingly glide. I into the big vermilion departure swim, sayingly, do you think the I-do world is probably made of roses and mauves, of so longs and ashes?
So, now we've invited 3 literary critics into our segment on modernism to get their take on the poem Into the Strenuous Briefness by E.E. Cummings. So the one question we have for them is, how do these elements all encompass the big picture? Oh hey, didn't see you there. Anyways, when it comes to using structure, syntax, and punctuation in new and peculiar ways, E.E. Cummings is a master. The traditional era of writing was all about keeping things simple and the same. They all followed a rule, whereas modern era brought along new ways of writing that had never been done before. Let's dive into some examples in E.E. Cummings' poem, Into the Strenuous Briefness. You're gonna have to bear with me, because I don't have an easel, so I had to get very creative. First off is in line 4. Into the Strenuous Briefness by E.E. Cummings has this theme a lot, where there are no spaces in between commas and the word that follows. Like here in line 4, where it says darkness friends. I even wrote it in red, so you can see. Also, in lines 9 and 10, Cummings chooses when he wants to capitalize the letter I. This is prevalent through the entirety of the poem Into the Strenuous Briefness. This is actually the only capitalized I in the entire poem, which occurs in line 10. In lines 16 through 20 of the poem, we see a lot of these stylistic elements all come together. This is where a lot of these untraditional ideas come into play, especially when it comes to structure of writing. Here we see parentheses around a question and also parentheses around the final thought. This interjection really makes the reader stop and think. We also see the uncapitalization of the letter I and also the use of a symbol. All these ideas wouldn't have been okay in the traditional world. The traditional way of thinking was super clean cut and everything had a place. And the modern era had a lot of critics because many people didn't realize why these things were necessary, when in all reality they really help for readers to understand the meaning of poetry better, and especially what the poem was about. Into the Strenuous Briefness is a key example of all these elements. Anyways, Into the Strenuous Briefness is a prime example of poetry that's not only meant to be heard and read, but also meant to be seen. All these elements in Into the Strenuous Briefness of syntax and structure really point out the key thoughts of the modern era, bringing in philosophical ideas and also human significance.
So in this poem, it basically talks about how life is going to keep going whether you're in it or not. So in the moments that you do have, make sure you live them to the fullest. Even if, like, let's say this is really deep, but let's say you're on your deathbed or something. Whatever moments you have, live them. Like, live them to the fullest. I don't know, like, don't dread those moments. Or even in the moments that you do dread, take advantage of those moments to make a moment out of that dreadful moment, if that makes sense. Or even in moments that there aren't big things happening, I guess, in your life, make them a moment. Count how many times I say moment, because I'm going to say it a lot and I'm just kind of annoying myself. But basically, it just gives a different look on life, and to actually allow the reader to think, like, I really don't take advantage of the moments that I have in life, and I just go through them, and I want to do so many things in this small amount of time that I don't take the time to actually realize that this is a moment I've been waiting for, this is exciting, and I should be thankful for this moment. We just like, okay, I just had this moment, on to the next, you know? I don't know how to describe it, but it's just a really, really good poem, and I think that it's really, really short, and I like it being short because it kind of like reflects on what the poem talks about. It's like life is only so short and the poem's really short, but it gives us a glimpse of like how we live our lives, and we don't even realize how we live until we just have to sit down and be like, I'm rushing life, and life only is so small, and there's only so many things you can do. No matter how much stuff you try to cram in this little life, you can only get so much stuff done, and you're gonna only be happy for a amount of time that you allow yourself to, because you're so busy trying to incorporate so many different activities in one lifespan.
So basically, what I gathered from this poem, the one main thing that stuck out to me the most was diction. Diction really is the foundation of poetry, in my opinion. It sets up everything else. It sets up the imagery, the storyline. Really, you have nothing if you don't have diction. Good, important diction. So really, starting off from the beginning, I noticed the title and the first line, Strenuous Briefness, really stuck out because it's kind of almost a juxtaposition of comparing them. The strenuous is like the stress, and the briefness is trying to fit the grand scheme of life into a brief moment. And it kind of really just stresses that the whole time we're going through life, we're trying to stress everything and trying to make life good and just trying to fit it into a small moment, but life is so grand. Another thing that really stuck out to me was the word vermilion. It really doesn't mean much. It means red, but really the fact that he picked this word to mean such a big thing, just to stick out the diction, really stuck out to me. And then finishing out the poem, the last couple lines comparing roses and hellos, and so longs and ashes. So longs he paired together, put it as one word, though it should be two. That kind of stuck out to me as well as being influential. He really wanted the emphasis on that one strong word. However, the combination of the roses and hello with the goodbye, the so longs and the ashes, it's like the beginning and end of life. He put them together as just one pairing to show that life is so brief, but we try to make it grand, but it's brief. That's all we have for now, folks.
Thanks for watching. Tune in next week to see me name all of my fish.